Us in the studios this morning to discuss this subject matter. Let's welcome retired Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu. He's a security and defense consultant and also an expert in the Safe School Declaration. Pleasure to have you this morning, Group Captain.
Good morning, thank you.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, regular security analyst, Dr. Kabir Adamo, is a security and risk management expert. Dr. Kabir, pleasure having you again.
The pleasure is mine. Good morning.
And we also have Dr. Ona Ekomu, President, Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operators of Nigeria. He's joining us via Zoom. Good morning and welcome. Well, we are looking forward to him joining us in a short while. Next, we have Professor Tanibi Alemika, Professor of Criminology and member Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so on the split screen there, you can see Dr. Ona Ekomu is to the right of your screen and Professor Tanibi Alemika is to the left of your screen. Professor Alemika, let's begin the conversation with you because in recent times, of course, we've been discussing security issues and all the other three guests that we have introduced this morning have been our regulars. But of course, you also, you've been with us on a number of other security matters. How do you situate what is happening in terms of kidnapping for ransom in different parts of the country, and more particularly the abduction, mass abduction of school students from their hostels? The numbers are simply alarming.
Kingsley, good morning. I think we are experiencing quite a very difficult, very sad, and very embarrassing situation with respect to banditry. I think we must start first. What is banditry? Banditry is a group of criminals or outlaws that operate more or less in rural communities or on the highways. So the two aspects, they are criminals, they are outlaws. They operate most of the time in rural communities and on the highways. And what to take from this is the fact that being in rural areas meant the presence of law, especially in the context of Nigeria. The presence of law, we say they are outlaw, that means they are not completely under the law or the capacity of law enforcement agency to regulate their activity, to prevent the activity and to ensure they are brought to justice when they commit their activity. So they operate in a place where the presence of law and the presence of government are weak. So if you apply that to Nigeria, people talk about ungoverned spaces. I'm not sure they are ungoverned. They are only governed by outlaws. So these people are governing, outlaws have taken over governance in many of those places. So we got here first because we never had long-term planning about how to secure Nigeria. We had for many, many decades operated as on ad hoc basis. A problem comes, we apply fire brigade and we solve it, we go home to rest until another one comes around. So basically it's lack of long-term security planning. And I continue to give a typical example of this lack of planning. Take our security agencies, perhaps with the exception of the military. There are no annual plan on how to replenish even their members of the security forces that retire, that somehow disengage from the various services. You have a police force that is about 300,000 in strength. And then, of course, of that strength, you expect to lose no less than, or disengage no less than about 8 to 10,000 per year. And then for 3 years, you did not recruit. After 3 years, you ask them to recruit 10,000. You have lost 30,000, you are only replacing with 10,000. Then you wait for another 3 years before you do that. So these are part of the lack of long-term multiple planning. The second thing is even planning with respect to who does what, which agency is responsible. For example, today, who is responsible for rural area? Almost our security forces, until this banditry, are more or less concentrated in protecting the cities, and only certain part of the cities where the elites actually live, where you have over concentration on security forces. Even worse than that, even in those elite area, only people who either hold political offices, high political offices, or people who are, can afford by buying security, are over policed in the sense of having almost detachment of security personnel from the various security forces, police, civil defense, and the rest of them, to police their area. So I think at this point, I just want to leave the absence of long-term planning about how to secure the country. And then the second, which is related, about equally long-term planning about the necessary capability and capacity and capability to protect the country.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And let's bring in Ona Ekomu. Ona Ekomu, we have been discussing this issue with you sometime last week, and I can also remember some of your postulations with respect to the way and manner the security operatives are handling this issue. From what we read this morning on the National Daily, the governor of Zamfara State did say that Nigerians will be shocked when they know those who are behind the abduction of the students, in his state. What does that tell us? Does it mean that there are accomplices, there are possible accomplices, either within the security operatives or within the society? What do you make of that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kiran. Clearly, we do not expect that it's those guys carrying the AK-47 rifles in the bush that are doing the planning, that are procuring the weapons, that are moving the cash, that are paying the salaries. Those guys don't have the capacity, they don't have the brains to do that. So there will be brains, certainly, in the cities or even overseas, running this place. Remember, we live in a digital world now. People have mobile telephones, and people can make calls, you can send instructions, you can even make payments, you can move cash around without leaving the comfort of your living room. So what I'm saying is the governor is not saying anything new. The governor is saying what is already in the public domain, that a lot of bad guys, a lot of big guys, sorry, not bad guys, a lot of big guys are involved in this thing, and they are the brains behind it. They are benefiting from it. They are recruiting armies. They are recruiting capacity. They are providing weaponry to these bad guys, including RPGs and other pernicious weapons, F2 rifles, K2 rifles, sorry. And you have all kinds of stuff, good gear that is in the hands of these bandits. So what does this tell us in terms of opening this conversation? It says that we'll have a very big problem on our hands. It's not only about neutralizing the bandits, like Prof called them, the ones who are governing the ungoverned spaces now. So he says the ungoverned spaces are now governed by the bandits. Well, but I guess I don't know who voted for them to go and govern the ungoverned spaces, but that's another story. So it's not just that the bandits are governing the ungoverned spaces. They are promoters, they are planners, they are strategic thinkers. Because if you look at it, I mean, everything the bandits have done, we have discussed on this NTA program, your GMN. We have said that they are going to intensify attacks on schools because it evokes a lot of emotion. I remember Group Captain Sadiq saying that last time we had this conversation. And, they are so predictable. And so that's why it bothers me that our own security planners are not able to cash into their predictability. Because if you look at the data, it tells us what is going on. And but I think I'll keep my opening comments short, just to bring my opening comments to a close. Governor Matawale has said something that is very important, that there are sponsors out there who, in fact, their names will shock us. So let us have those names so that we can go to the source. Sometimes you got to go to the source, the root of the problem, to deal with it, such that the leaves and the branches will wither away. And that is so very important. And this is, of course, where there's a problem in Nigeria. They always tell you, we know who the sponsors of terrorism are. It's only when they are arrested in Dubai that the truth comes out. But here in Nigeria, we don't seem to be able to tell the truth to ourselves. So it means we want these problems to continue flourishing and Nigerians to keep suffering and being under the yoke of outlaws and bandits and terrorists and insurgents.
Dr. Onoyehomu, thank you very much there for your opening salvo. Let's come to the studios. Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu. Well, another kidnap incident, this time 317, just only about 20 or so fewer than those who were picked up in Kankara. That was sometime in December. And of course, the entire world is again up and watching what is playing out in Nigeria. What does this tell us? What should it shock us into doing?
Well, it should shock us, in fact, a long time ago, since yesterday, since last year, to pay attention to security and safety in our schools. There is no more any doubt that school children have become the pawn in a chess game of this violence. Again, like Ikomu said, and I said last week, picking children from the school is one of the relatively easiest things that a bandit can do. There is so little risk to himself, that is the bandit, and there is very big return because you are carrying number. In addition with the emotional and the international uproar, especially when it happens to be female students that you are picking. So every criminal wants maximum return for little investment. And that's what the school offers. Now, can we secure all our schools and put security agencies all over? Again, like the first guest said, we don't have the numbers. We have so many schools, we have so many areas to cover, we don't have enough numbers. So I think we always come back, whether it is in the northeast, whether it is banditry, what is we have to accept that Nigeria is under-resourced in terms of human resources, in terms of equipment. And why I say equipment also, you will find that these bandits, they don't go relatively far. They stay within those bushes. But the only thing they have come to realize is that the capacity of the security agencies to reach where they are is very little. None of them has crossed the border with these children to go to another country. They remain within. Maximum maybe a distance of 50, 30 kilometers. They are within there. But again, it's a function of equipment. You can surround and move into major highways, but can you penetrate the inner precincts of those forests? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the cameras when bandits are hiding under foliage? Do you have the camera to pinpoint them? Because even when you say an aircraft is going, there are different kinds of cameras and optical devices. Some aircraft have them, some don't have them. Some, as soon as you are under a foliage, that is the end. The pilot will only go round and round and round. But then there are sophisticated equipment that will pick body heat, that will pick and pinpoint where those people are. We have to ask ourselves. I want this honest conversation between the security agencies, the executive branch, and the legislative branch. Just what kind of security personnel do we have, and what do we need? We certainly don't have what we need in terms of numbers, in terms of equipment, in terms of capacity. And as long as we don't do that, now again, I come to guarding any school is a very expensive endeavor when you look at it. But it's not as if all schools are helpless. We should prioritize at least schools that are located in conflict, challenged environments. We may not have to do the whole schools if we don't have, but let's concentrate. Let's put, even if it is minimum, from the government to school authorities to local communities, like I said, there's a role, that they can play. That is as far as schools are concerned. When you talk about general kidnapping again, also even as an individual, there are things you can do. You are not completely powerless. There are precautionary measures you could take in planning your journey. You know, if it is a private, if it's a commercial vehicle, right from where people are entering. Because like this one in Niger State, Transport Authority, I tend to believe there must have been an informant or even one of the bandits inside the vehicle. Because you need somebody to be giving you update, where to attack and everything. If it is somebody coming to a house to pick somebody, there must have been some form of surveillance. No kidnapper attacks a place without surveillance, because that is the recipe for failure. So there must have been, but for somebody to observe surveillance, whether covert or overt, again, that person has to be a bit trained. So even a local may guard, if he's trained, you know, to fish out somebody who is paying unhealthy attention to a house or to a school, even if he's not armed, he's in a position to do something. That is what I have to say.
All right, and let's bring in Kabiru Adamu here. Persistent mass abduction of students in Nigeria. What do you make of the situation?
The very fabric of our society is being attacked, and we should give it the attention that it deserves. And for that extent, I would like to commend NTA for consistently highlighting this topic. We need to, as a society, wake up to the call. We are in an emergency situation. Education is what would make or mar us. In particular, the North has been, almost every statistics that have been reeled out, you have the North at the bottom end of those statistics. And so where you have a situation where what would bring the North out of this unfortunate situation it has found itself is being attacked, then frankly it deserves more attention than it's getting at the moment. Now, having said that, I would differ a bit from what my three other co-discussants have mentioned. Our emphasis, and even the government's emphasis, have been on more or less on the kinetic approach. And the kinetic approach is more reactive. Things have happened, and we're trying to address them. As a risk manager, I want to look at the root causes. Why are we where we are? In the last few days, I've listened to extensively, unfortunately they are not in the public space, but to participants, I've listened to their views, perspectives on why we're where we are. Number one, the breakdown of the value system that we have as a society. Why is someone before who perhaps was a harder, why all of a sudden he's in the possession of our RPG? Now, my co-discussants have mentioned, perhaps the reasons why all of these RPGs, and in previous discussions we've mentioned that extensively, the porosity of our borders. Then, unlike what Dr. Ona said when he was speaking about the statement by the Zamfara state governor, I'm looking at it from a different approach. The centrifugal forces that are driving at our society, that's a root cause. There are centrifugal forces presently at play. Political is one of them. In particular, Zamfara State has a very unique centrifugal force. We all remember how the governor emerged, the circumstances that he emerged. His mandate is actually a bit questionable when you compare it with the number of votes that the other party had. And we've seen how that played out in the recently concluded elections in that state. So that's a very important root cause, the political centrifugal forces at play. Then the social centrifugal forces, and then the big one, the elephant in the room, the economic centrifugal force, the number of unemployed persons. And Zamfara State is actually at the peak of that. So these are issues that we need to pay very close attention to. The first one I mentioned, the collapse of the value system. How is that playing out? It ties us back to my earlier point. Education is a very critical influencer of the outcome of any security arrangement you want to play out. Why? Because it's that education that would give the youth perhaps a future. Now you have a situation where, frankly, the youth can no longer even go to school. Then what of women and children? So very, very critical that we look at those root causes. Climate change. No one is speaking about that, unfortunately. Now, the next one, which I would like to talk about, tied to this point I'm making, is the inability of the government at both the federal and the state level to use the various layers of security architecture at their disposal. As an example, the State Council, the Defense Council, the National Security Council. We are at a stage where our leaders need to come out with a single statement that would de-escalate the tension. The tension is very, very high. Religious bodies are issuing statements, governors are issuing statements that are divisive, unfortunately. So this is the time for those councils, because they are the highest levels within the security architecture, to come out together jointly to make a statement that would de-escalate that tension. So we can perhaps in the course of our conversation look at those root causes and then the mitigation measures, because by the theme of our gathering here is solutions. And perhaps in the course of the conversation we can talk about that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamo. Indeed, we'll return to the guests to begin to look at ways of getting out of the current maelstrom with respect to banditry and kidnapping. We have our correspondent, Shehu Mohammed Dati, who is at Jangebe in Talata Mafara, local government area of Zamfara. That's the epicenter of the latest kidnap incident. You can see our correspondent there, Shehu. Pleasure to have you this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. What's the situation in Jangebe?
Very good morning, sir. Jangebe is calm. They are still going about their normal activities. I can see even students still going to school. We are just few steps away from the GGSS Jangebe, where the incident happened on Friday. And since on Friday that we came in, the town is calm. Nothing is going on. Their only thing is that they want to see the students back. That is all they talk about. As of yesterday, when one of the media outfits broke the news that the students had been released, it was the talk of the town everywhere, but we later realized that it wasn't true. So the situation now is still calm. They are still waiting to see how the students will return to Jangebe.
Yes, Shehu, indeed, one can understand that the situation is such that the residents of the area where this incident took place will not, of course, come to terms with reality until these students are released. What are people saying? What is dominating conversation in that area now that the students are yet to be released?
Yeah, the conversation is they are saying it was a false alarm that was raised yesterday, saying that the students have been released, when later they realized that it's not true. So that has been the topic of discussion as at yesterday up to maybe this morning, because they are still in their houses, while some others are still going to other places for their normal activities. Behind me here, you can see there is a police post. Immediately after it, there is another one as well. They are all close to the school. But actually, the talk of the town is, why is it that there was a false alarm yesterday that the students have been released? We are made to understand that some people said the students have been released and they are at the MS Palace in Ankara. Later, when we investigated, we found out that 17 out of the 317 that were kidnapped escaped. Hello?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
We can hear you, Shehu.
There was a rumor that the students were in the MS Palace in Ankara yesterday, but it wasn't true. We were made to understand that it wasn't true. There were no students there. So they still talk about how the students will come back, and why is it that there is a rumor that the students have been released.
Shehu, tell us something about the geo-profile of Jangebe. Is it a big town or is it a small town? I remember the name Jangebe about 20 years ago when a gentleman who went by that name was tried under Sharia law for allegedly stealing a cow. He was found guilty and his hand was cut off. But tell us, is Jangebe, is it a big place or a small place? And are there other security formations in the town that might have staved off the assault by the kidnappers?
Well, actually, Jangebe is a big town. It's a large town, extended. And there are 2 police outposts as at Friday that we came in. there are two police outposts. Behind me is one. After this, there is another police outpost there, and they are all armed. I just don't know whether there are many in there, but we can see about 5 here. And after this, there are others there. Amalgamation of the police, poles, and army as well. So Jengebe is indeed a big town.
Have you had the opportunity of speaking with any of the parents of the abductees and what their mood is like at this time? Certainly it will not be pleasant, but have you had the privilege of interacting with any of the parents or relatives of the students who were abducted?
Yeah, we had opportunity of speaking with not only one of the parents. I think about 3 we've spoken with, and what they are saying is the government should intensify effort to see that the abductees are released. That has been their own agitation. That is what they only want to see. We've spoken with one that has 3 of his daughters taken away. He says what he only wants the government is to intensify effort to see that those students return home.
Yeah, but actually one of the newspapers we had this morning showed a lady who said that 2 of her children were involved in it, and of course she was crying so profusely. Shehu, before we let you go, let us understand this, where the school is situated. Is it within the town or the outskirts of the town? Because many are wondering how the abductors, how it was so easy for the abductors to get into the school, and they removed over 317 children without anybody noticing their action within over an hour that they spent in that school.
Yeah, actually the school is at the main road. Just where I'm standing now is just few steps here, and it's just you coming into the town of Jengebe. The school is situated there, and they can easily go in. Why? Because there is only one security man at the gate of the school, and he's not that fully armed. And what they did was, we are meant to understand what they did. They came in large number, surrounded the outposts, the 2 outposts that are close to the school before they start operating. Equally, they surrounded the school. They went about 50 of them into the school. Equally, we were meant to understand that 2 Hilux vans came, dropped them in the gate of the school, and then went away. So they will have the opportunity of surrounding the school and make their way into the school easily.
Well, Shehu, when we interacted with our correspondent who was at Kagara in Niger State, following the abduction of students and some staff and other residents of the Government Science College in that state in Niger, part of what emerged was that on the eve of the assault on the college itself, there had been telltale signs of the movements of some of these bandits. Some of the surrounding villages had been sacked, and the security guard had noticed a couple of unusual movements by persons who look like stragglers, but obviously on a reconnaissance mission. What have you gathered from Jangebe? It's a big town, but were there assaults in and around the vicinity before well, that's a cameraman there taking a shot of a kid on a bike. Life goes on for that child, and best of luck to the baby. All right, so Shehu, just to get a point, so what happened a day or 2 on the eve of the assault in and around Jangebe itself?
All right. We actually asked that question, but we are meant to understand that there wasn't any assault in either close by or in Jangebe village, not even within the villages. They only came, maybe they have made their arrangement earlier. They earlier went to one of the schools that is in the town, but they are meant to understand that that wasn't the school that the students are. So they now move ahead to come to the GGSS Jangebe. But there wasn't any assault of such in anywhere, whether in the Jangebe town or within Jangebe.
Okay, I don't know whether you can hear me, but again, we're being asked to. Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to find out from him whether we have a vigilante, in that community, because every community these days have a vigilante group,
Vigilante, that's
that
right.
also monitor the entire vicinity of the community. Right. Thank you, Shehu, for reaching us this morning. Thank you indeed. If there is need, we might return to you for further conversations on what is happening in Jengebe, with respect to the release of the students, which is being expected by all Nigerians. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, Kieran, while we were having that interaction with our correspondent Shehu, Dr. Kabir Adamo was indicating that an official of the Zamfara state government was earlier quoted as saying that the number is probably not 317, but something fewer than 300, probably about 297. So we'll see how we confirm that, but obviously that will be nearly 300 still who are out there at this time. So a deep thanks to our correspondent, Shehu Mohammed Dati. Now let's come back to our guests via Zoom, Professor Etanibi Alemika. Professor Alemika, Dr. Kabiru, and indeed all of you raised very important points. But let's take a look at this. Following the incessant mass abduction, we have seen the reaction of some state governments. Niger State, of course, has closed some of the boarding schools. Sokoto State has also closed boarding schools outside of the metropolis. Zamfara has done the same thing. Kano has gone ahead to close 4 tertiary institutions owned by the state government. Some persons would argue that in a sense, this is almost a realization of one of the key objectives of Boko Haram. What is your reaction? And therefore, how should we begin to approach this issue?
Thank you. I think it's very critical to begin to try to understand. And I think this is where the intelligence services can help us. We all say banditry, banditry, banditry. Are we dealing with just banditry, or are we dealing with an alliance between banditry and terrorist group like Boko Haram? We need to have more, well, I do hope they have more information on that. But I think effort should be made to begin to question, to begin to address some of these issues. You will recall when there was this serious problem in the Niger Delta, every criminality in Niger Delta was attributed to militancy. When Yaradua government gave amnesty, and more or less a lot of the militants in quote repented and were placed on stipends, criminality had not disappeared from that area. Pipeline vandalization had not disappeared. It had reduced, but it has not disappeared. So it meant that we didn't actually disaggregate what was going on there sufficiently. And I think we must be suspecting something like that with respect to banditry, the large, the focus on very large scale institutions in abduction. Of course, like people say, are these banditry almost transmuting to terrorism? And then, of course, they are sourcing their resources through kidnapping. I just think there are a lot of things we need to know that I'm not sure we know for now. And I think that hard work needs to be done to be able to, address some of these issues, including the one you have raised, whether indeed these are not some part of collaboration in which Boko Haram is achieving itself. And I think almost all of us on this program know that when you dislodge a terrorist group from its sanctuary, it's spread out in terms of cells. And at that point, it can actually be more potent, more dangerous than when they have a sanctuary with more or less a territory where the fight is taking place. Again, I don't know how much we paid attention to all of this. For me, and that is why I keep saying, the issue of security, long-term security planning, security policy that is effectively understood by the community and all stakeholders in society, and capacity and capabilities of security agencies, apart from non-kinetic, this thing, it does appear we don't have any coordinated plan, bringing these things together. So I suspect, as you said, that we're dealing more than just, people who are out there and just look for ransom and are targeting school. They are targeting, first and foremost, the heart of what Northern Nigeria need to do to catch up with the rest of the world, which is education. And that's what Boko Haram said it didn't want, terrorists said was haram. So I think we need a lot more information in this respect. Our security intelligence agencies, I do hope they have this information, and I do hope it will begin to guide their activities, and government will begin to use it also more or less to galvanize society in an effort to attempt to attack this challenge.
Well, Dr. Olaihomu, maybe you would like to also speak to this. Many schools are being shut down as a result of banditry and the mass abduction that's been going on for some time now. What does that tell you? Because as Kingsley rightly put it, it is the Boko Haram's dreams are being fulfilled because they never wanted any kind of Western education at all in parts of the North.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kieran, for that question. Well, I think I devoted a whole chapter to school in my book, my new book on Boko Haram, titled Boko Haram, to school attacks, chapter 8. And all of these factors we are talking about here, I analyzed them there. And so maybe I'll send a copy to Honorable Kingsley, and he can read it, and maybe next time we chat, he can take me up on some issues there. But having said that, I think it's clear, like Professor Alemika has said, there is clearly a metastasis, and I've made that argument over and over. There's a metastasis of the threat, of the BH threat around the country. We know that BH has gone abroad meaning beyond the Northeast. So BH is everywhere. Now the threat of the banditry, the Southwest banditry, is connected to the problem of the Mujao and that economic jihadism. That's what I called it in yesterday's Punch. That's coming into the country from the Northwest axis, from Algeria, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and into Nigeria. And that, of course, I think somebody just mentioned porous borders. I think it was Kabir that said something about porous borders a minute ago. And so those kinds of things, they are just complicating factors. So I think schools are targeted, clearly. And for the real reason that Group Captain Shehu Sadiq had said last time, that because as parents, we become emotionally involved when our children are attacked, when our children are involved. And so it takes on a different meaning. They got a bus load of 50 or 60 persons the other day in Niger State. Nobody was bothered. But when they kidnapped 27 from Kagara, it became a big deal because children were involved. But I think I want to just back up. I want to go to the solutions. I'm tired of talking about the problems. And I think every Nigerian is almost an expert in the problems now. There is definitely a need to focus on effective leadership in this country. That is really what is lacking, and that is what is dragging everything back. So everything we have spoken about, Professor Lemika's security planning argument, Kabir's value system, Mr. Group Captain Shadik's arguments, they are all tied into this problem of poor and lack of leadership. And so what do I mean by lack of leadership? Well, we have, number one, we spoke about intelligence. I think Professor Alemika was talking about the intelligence agencies. Where is the leadership from that agency? Well, but I don't even want to go to the agencies yet. I want to stick with the the political leadership, because those are the people we vote to lead us in the country. So let us look at first look at our local government chairman, look at our state governors, and then look at the federal level. You know, for example, something has just happened in, okay, let's go to Kankara. We had the 344 schoolboys that were returned at Kankara. Over 500 were seized, many escaped, but we got 344 back, and thank God everything is over. What is Katsina State government doing about an in-depth study of that problem, so that it can glean proper intelligence, proper information, refined information about what happened there, such that this can be prevented in future? I hear a lot of belly aching about complaining from state governments, oh, we are not chief security officer, but you have so much latitude. You have a lot of powers, many things that you can do. Kankara has happened. What have you done now to do a post-mortem? In fact, in intelligence analysis, we do pre-mortem. We dissect the dead body before it's dead. Now we are saying the dead body has died already. Do the post-mortem. And these Africans cannot, they don't even want to get the information. And you have brilliant guys like Alemika, Kabir, Shehu there. Nobody's calling on them to come and do some of these things for them. You must have the information, you must have the knowledge, deep knowledge of what happened, so that you can cure that disease. If not, the disease will kill the organism. You know, that's from intelligence. What about experiencing? We have gone through these things. We've experienced these adversities. What lessons are we taking away from those adversities? How was it handled? How are we sharing? Who is writing? I want to see more books on these things, not just discussion. Honorable Kingsley, you are an expert in this thing. I need to see some books from you on this, and looking at case studies of what happened, not just generalization or blaming the colonial masters. Colonial masters have long gone. Let's face our problems as Nigerians. We need originality in our leadership. We have to come up with new models of thinking and leading. Nigeria has unique issues. We are the only country that has problems with religion, problems with ethnic divide, problems with, north-south regional divide. We have even politics. Our politics is the one that, in my language, you say politics not a barrier. Say politics that you kill people for. You know, this is the only country that has that kind of politics. Politics is a place, it's a forum where you share your ideas. But here we take it to the hilt. We want to eliminate the opponent. So these are some leadership issues that bedevil us, that make it impossible for us to, meet our promise as a nation. And we must solve this security conundrum by bringing effective leadership forward, at all levels.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Onaiyehomo. I hope you were not telling our viewers that I'm an expert in banditry, so that I don't go and do a book on banditry, indicating my experience, but certainly that's far from it. Thank you very much there for your perspective. I want to skip Group Captain Sadiq. In the meantime, I'll come to Dr. Kabir, but we'll return to Group Captain Sadiq on the basis of what you said. Looking at the geography of Zamfara, looking at the politics of Zamfara itself and other occurrences around the northwest region, plus the comments attributed to the governor that if you know those who are behind the incidents, you will be shocked. And we're saying, look, you guys have said, shock us so that we know what to do. But again, the issue of the intelligence community comes in here. Should the intelligence community be waiting for the general populace to be shocked before acting, to get out who these potential shockers are? That's one. If there are funds, and there are huge funds involved, why is it apparently challenging to trace, track, and get those who are in charge of these funds? And thirdly, I know it's not easy, but it's also not rocket science, as some experts would say. For tens of abductors to plan, they must communicate. The communication could be non-verbal, it could be verbal. The verbal communication could be interpersonal or over channels. Why does it appear difficult to intercept communication? why does it appear difficult? I mean, we saw what happened, we see what happens in some circumstances. It's very easy to pick up a few persons, maybe because those ones are in the cities, and then when you go to remote locations, it becomes, a bit, why? So that, look, we've had you on Good Morning Nigeria. We've also had Dr. Ona Ehomo on Good Morning Nigeria. I recall on that occasion, probably about a year or more ago, there was a terror incident in France, in Paris, and there was a threat of another terror incident. And the security agencies, as though you were watching the movie, went from location to location where they were busting the planners. And it looked like a movie, but they said, look, it wasn't really a movie. These guys were acting on prior intelligence. They were acting on their dossier, so at the right time, they picked it up. Is it a matter of lack of capacity or absence of political will to act?
A combination of both, unfortunately. I am of the opinion, and I stand to be corrected, that we have capable intelligence availability in Nigeria. I keep on saying this. There are 27 ministries, departments, and agencies in Nigeria. Each of these 27 ministries and departments have an intelligence function. But the challenge has always been the fusion of that intelligence. America woke up to the importance of fusion of intelligence after 9/11. We haven't yet realized that. But the good thing is that the Office of the National Security Advisor has gone really far in an attempt to establish that fusion. I think if I'm right, I don't want to be the one to let out the cat from the bag, but he's about to launch a fusion center here in Abuja. If I'm right, the building has already been completed. What is remaining is all the paraphernalia, the various platforms that will allow for the fusion. And then if we go back, Mr. President has actually directed in both public statements and in written statements for the establishment of fusion centers. If I remember well, one in Abuja and then the other one in the northeast. So there is the realization and there is the political will, because Mr. President is the commander-in-chief and he has issued that directive. Now, what are the players doing? There are challenges among the players, unfortunately, and we need to admit that. Rivalry, sometimes operating in silos, and then sometimes, and this is very important, intelligence is a function of the requirement of the person given the tasking. As an example, and we've agreed to this, I don't need to repeat it, but the remote areas, unfortunately, don't have the kind of security presence that we have in the cities. So if the receiver does not see that priority for intelligence at that remote center, the likelihood is that the agencies that are in charge of intelligence are not likely to prioritize those remote areas. But with this types of development and the consequences it's facing, I see a shift in that area. Now, also, let's go back to the launch of the revised National Security Strategy document 2019. We were promised in that document that there will be a paradigm shift. I'm quoting the National Security Advisor almost verbatim, from the state-centric approach to security to a human approach to security. And he listed several factors to achieve that. Unfortunately, it is the implementation of that strategy that is lacking at the moment. So to answer your question, yes, intelligence is there to be harvested, and it can easily be harvested. For those of us that are in the private field, I run a consultancy, and I know anytime a client needs certain information, it's very easy, because all you need to go there is to harvest that intelligence. And that takes me back to that prioritization. Once there is that prioritization...
No, I'm sorry to interject, Dr. Kabiru. The appropriate metaphor is to say now that we are in a state of war. So how could you possibly be in a state of war with bandits, kidnappers, abductors, and terrorists, and yet, we are pussyfooty with intelligence?
Unfortunately, the reality. I'm not here to kid about it. I have a sense of responsibility. I mentioned earlier on that there are various levels of the defense, the security architecture. Not one of them has been convened. And that will tell you it's an issue of prioritization. We need to call a spade a spade. Yes, we're in an emergency, we realize it, but unfortunately our actions do not speak that we're in an emergency. Governors have been speaking, I said it, we're in an era of public FOPA by governors. You've covered that extensively. It shouldn't be. Because once you make that statement and you see the reaction, the consequence on the national security, the next governor should be careful about what he says. But we haven't seen that type of realization of the emergency. So clearly, intelligence is there to be harvested. But for the only way that intelligence can be harvested is if there is a prioritization. And that prioritization would come from the receiver, tasking the various intelligence agencies. I mean, as an example, we've spoken about ungoverned spaces, and like Professor mentioned, they're actually governed by those bad guys. Why are they governing it? The weapons at their disposal. How do we remove those weapons from their hand? What is stopping, for instance, a tasking from the receiver, asking the security, the intelligence agencies to first identify the supply channels for those weapons? And to that extent, I differ a bit from the response of my two earlier guests on the question around whether the linkage between the terrorist and the bandits. Based on information at my disposal, there is no linkage yet. As far as kidnap for ransom in schools is concerned, there are other linkages, but the danger in reaching a conclusion when we don't have that information available yet is that unfortunately we're indirectly and unwittingly selling an idea. So we need to be very careful. The idea is being planted right now in the minds of those who are framing this linkage, but we can stop it. How can we stop it? First and foremost, dominate those ungoverned spaces. Because once you remove the environment from them, then it makes it a bit difficult for them to plan and operate. I mean, it's not easy keeping 300 plus students. Think about the logistics. I mean, for women listening to us and other homemakers that are listening to us, imagine what you have to do to keep a family of, let's say, 10. Just the logistics involved. Now we're talking of 300 plus. So imagine the intelligence that can be harvested from keeping 300 plus in a place like Zamfara State. It's available. Then let's even move a step further. Surveillance. All the technical capabilities for surveillance. We just heard from the correspondence, a Hilux came to drop those persons. We've got surveillance capabilities at that level, and Group Captain Sadiq can talk.
And they went to a school earlier, and they said, no, that's the wrong place.
Moving.
So they had their target.
Exactly. And more importantly, they had informants. Somebody must have done recce for them, identified those locations, and most likely there was communication at that level.
So why don't you accept the communication?
So that's my point. Intelligence is there to be harvested. I emphasize that word. But how do you harvest this intelligence? By using the capabilities.
You have said it all, that there's no cohesion, because we have the operatives who should gather this intelligence. There's no cohesion among them.
But Kieran, let's go back to what Dr. Ona mentioned. Impunity and lack of accountability. By now, a commission should be investigating these issues, finding out who dropped the ball. If there is an agency, for example, that is supposed to be manning those surveillance capabilities, and then more importantly, after the abduction, think about it, 300 plus persons herded into the forest, trails were left. A lot of information is there to be harvested. It's not being harvested at the moment. All I heard is
where is the postmortem? That's what
exactly.
Yes.
The helicopters were put for surveillance. That for me was, unfortunately, it was a bit ridiculous, and he would speak to that.
All right, gentlemen, let's just take a short break. When we come back, the conversation continues. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Services. It's becoming a very interesting conversation. When we come back, that will certainly continue.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the game changer, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Sule of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Logo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth Entrepreneurship Support Years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation. The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
All right, let's bring in a group captain, Sadiq Garba Shehu, retired, who is here with us. In most kidnappings and banditry activities, huge sums of money are paid to the abductors as ransom. And that has become the norm since this incident of kidnapping started. Now, on the part of government, for instance, if students are kidnapped, as we have it at the moment, will it be right to pay ransom for the release of these children? Is it encouraging to do that? If yes, what does it tell us? Are we now saying that when abductors come, we now allow them to do what they want to do and sit back, discuss with them, and pay them ransom? All right. Well, after that, in the next couple of days or thereabout, they can go back again and do the same. As you saw, the gap between Kagara incident and that of Zamfara is just a few days. So is paying ransom the right thing to do?
Thank you very much. Payment of ransom after hostages have been seized, it's a very dicey situation. Global best practice, even the UN has a recommendation that countries all over the world should cooperate and not to be paying ransom, because it has been agreed by experts and from experience that paying ransom encourages and aliments more kidnapping. That is on the ideal side of it. But when you bring yourself as the person whose hostage has been taken, either as a government personality or as a parent, now many things will play again global best practice. Even the countries that say they don't negotiate with bandits or with kidnappers, ultimately they do. But governments in themselves, always the step to take is to deny and not encourage payment of bandit. That is on the outside, communication you give. No government will accept that it has paid ransom to any bandit, and they will discourage so. But it's something like it's moral. It's very difficult, for example, to tell a parent who has the means to pay and secure his child that you are telling him. So what most countries do, they don't outlaw that. They discourage it, but they don't outlaw it. And they will not facilitate any payment of ransom, maybe from family members. But if the family members eventually get to pay ransom and get their person back, the government will look the other way. That is how it is. And again, sometimes payment of ransom is even though we say all lives are the same, but circumstances, they make some hostages more important than others. Some context. I will give you a context now. I am trying to be dramatic now. Supposing the bandits now say they are going to release Leah Sheribu, and they want $5 million to release her, and you throw that into debate in Nigeria, what do you think you are going to get? This is the context I'm saying. Somebody made the context that when the passengers in the Niger State transport were taken, yes, they are human beings, but it didn't raise. But as soon as you say students in Kagara, the tempo raised up. Now that you say there are even female students, again, it has gone up. So sometimes circumstances make one hostage more valuable or more demanding that you could do everything to get that person out. So that is the actual truth.
Well, Group Captain Sadiq, thanks a lot. I just, while we are still on this issue of ransom for payment, I want Professor Alemika to speak to this. I mean, he's a professor of criminology. Prof, payment of ransom would be part of an appeasement strategy. Amnesty would also be the other. But are you concerned, for instance, that, well, ransom continues to be paid in some instances, and apparently there appears to be no coordination in terms of an amnesty for the bandits? We hear some governors say, oh, these are repentant bandits, so we have amnestied them. But how do you proceed with an amnesty program without a concomitant disarmament element? You amnesty these guys, you say, okay, no more, don't behave badly again, or you pay them ransom. And in the meantime, when you have access or a sneak view of their armory, it's frightening. Are we getting it wrong or right?
Thank you. Just to indicate that the purpose of government, and I think it's something that needs to be acknowledged, that criminals should not profit from their crime. An effective government will ensure that this is the case. When criminals are rewarded, you set a very difficult precedent. And in this case, if we are not careful, we are actually substituting governance by governance for law and justice with indeed governance with ransom payment. So for me, a government must not and should not have a policy of ransom payment. Otherwise, it will undermine the purpose for its existence in the first instance, that law and justice should be the basis for governance and not this kind of paying criminals to secure public order, because that's what it amounts to. You cannot enforce law and justice to secure public order. You are therefore using, amnesty to secure public order. And I think it's a very dangerous precedent. But just like I think Sadiq just mentioned, these are emotional issues that you cannot restrain individual from what they seek to do and what they eventually do. But as a government policy, it shouldn't. Now to amnesty. Again, we're not talking about people engaging in a petty theft. If we are willing to give amnesty to people who kill, kidnap, kidnap and all those things, amnesty, why are we sending petty criminals to prison? So why not just declare that indeed there is no law again, no need for law in Nigeria, and therefore everybody is law to himself? So I think when we push some of this, we don't understand how ridiculous the argument we are pushing in terms of amnesty. So my view is we need to have a very concrete proposal that are well thought through, not just political, immediate political statement and rhetoric. And I think this is important. There's a difference between rehabilitation and amnesty. Assuming there are those who voluntarily surrender and came to say, look, yes, we did this, we now understand. If you need to rehabilitate, that's a different track or program that you need to undertake. Just to close, because I know the time is almost over, I think we must understand why are we in this situation that people are willing to pay ransom. The people paying ransom, families are saying, government has failed us. Nothing will come out of when even you are sure by the military, by the police that they will rescue them. People don't believe it. And therefore, they are also taking measure on individual basis to solve the problem that confront them. So what we need to do, and just to summarize it, and I said this very effectively, we need to do two things, summarize them as two things. We need to, institute effective leadership by politicians. We are talking of on governance, on governance spaces. Have we noticed that our various level of governance are ungoverned? not just because COVID has helped us, all the governors have migrated to Abuja. Most of them live perpetually in Abuja. Other is because of COVID, they will be in London, in Switzerland, and in America. Then once the governors leave the state capital, the local government chairmen also occupy the state capital and leave their local government issues unaddressed. So we need effective governance at these levels. Then another thing we need to do is we need to address the inadequate capacity, inadequate professionalism, inadequate performance, and accountability of our agencies and councils. Again, somebody mentioned the Security Council. How often do they meet? Important organizations like that should meet at least monthly, not just even in emergency situation, at least monthly. But do they meet? And where they meet, what do they do for how long? How much knowledge is used when they meet? So these are the challenges we have, Kingsley. And I think if we really want to get out of this problem and not move from one problem to another, then we have to do some of these things.
All right, thank you indeed. But maybe just inform you that, according to what the president just said, the president has actually warned the bandits. And he's saying, he's making it practically clear that because government is not taking action now does not mean that it's weak. Of course, he's talking about humanitarian aspect of any kinetic kind of move that could come from government. And so we're believing that, of course, in due course, that the bandits will understand that the government is not just watching. Something can still be done. We're not ruling out the possibility of ending banditry in this country via government action. For now, we have some tweets coming from our viewers who are making contributions. There really is a litany of tweets coming here, Kingsley. Let's see how we can get them read out as fast as we can. Chris Simeon says, most times I weep in secret concerning the mayhem called banditry and kidnappings that befall this country. It has made our country lose its value, prestige in the Committee of Nations.
Ahmed Mohammed, the federal government should occupy all the forests and thorough investigation should be carried out by the police, DSS, and civil defense on the movement of people and their businesses. In cities, CCTV cameras should be installed, house-to-house search should be carried out, and all illegal weapons seized.
Abdul Jalal Nuhu, first and foremost, education, employment, public orientation, and enlightenment against kidnapping and banditry is in collaboration with media, community policing, and reporting any suspected person, movement, and any suspected and unusual gathering to any security agencies near you.
Yunusa Idris, the military should comb the forests and any bandits or kidnapper captured should be dealt with instantly.
Ahmed Dachalam, government should pay compensation to all herdsmen that lost their loved ones and cattle to cattle rustlers, and those that lost their properties and their loved ones to herdsmen attack should also be compensated before they take the law into their hands.
Mike Anyakwo, governors are the chief security officers of their states and must be on top of their responsibilities. Any state with frequent security challenges means that the governor has failed and must be removed with a state of emergency declaration.
All right, Chinedu Obuiba, a state of emergency should be put in place in states with perennial incidents of kidnapping and banditry. States where internal security has continually failed, crimes that takes and of course truncates another person's life should be punishable by death and such justice swiftly delivered.
Now this is from Polly J. That's the Twitter handle. Politicians who are hungry for power are doing everything possible to discredit government. All this will stop when politicians decide to bury their do-or-die politics and join whoever is in power. They should also stop recruiting thugs who will help them get into power.
Steve Bond, state police is the remedy. The army can't police the entire country. Security is local.
Now, Ahmed Jubril, until the least of us is taken care of, the best of us cannot survive. Once again, until the least of us is taken care of, the best of us cannot survive. Governance should be taken to the minimum level of citizens, and sense of inclusion is powerful.
All right. We told us Sunday, adoption of modern security gadgets and governments will power to be proactive in order to be ahead of these bloodsuckers. Furthermore, state of emergency should be declared if these killings continue.
Festus Akimboyewa, sad that our countries are at the mercy of kidnappers and bandits. I support President Muhammadu Buhari's decision to rule out amnesty and negotiation with bandits, which would have handed a symbolic victory to the criminals on a platter of gold. Time to train and equip a strong anti-kidnapping and anti-banditry force.
Orobamba 2020, the key issue for insecurity in Nigeria is because Nigeria is under-policed. If you have enough security personnel in Nigeria, there won't be any room for kidnapping, and also Nigeria should invest much in technology.
Martins, kidnapping and banditry have become lucrative, where ransoms are paid in millions of naira for the wicked few to the detriment of the larger majority. The way out is to declare war against criminals, follow them to the forest and flush them out, equip the military.
Ekoja Sunday from Bayelsa. The solution to this menace is to take genuine Fulani herders from the bush and engage them on the need for them to accept ranching. When that is done, the criminal elements masquerading as Fulani herdsmen will be easily smoked out by the security agencies.
YB Saleh, governors should stop paying ransom to kidnappers. Paying them before the release of their captives is indirectly encouraging them to keep kidnapping. Kidnappers should be made to realize the stiff penalties that await them once they are apprehended.
Kamil Ibrahim Ramadan, monitoring by the security agency is key. Reports show that some security agencies are involved in some kidnappings.
Now, Titus Mondenox, stop negotiations on payment of ransom to criminals. It only emboldens them and makes you complicit in the crime. Use vital intelligence tool to rout them and their sponsors. Responsible nations don't negotiate with criminals.
Suleiman Babagana, it is high time the government address the root cause, which is poverty and illegal proliferation of weapons through porous borders, which is a result of failure of governance at some quarters. They are all preventable if everybody takes security as a personal responsibility.
Adams, banditry and kidnapping are now a lucrative business in our country. After politicians, only bandits make instant millions in just one abduction. Government should look for ways of bringing a lasting solution to this problem.
All right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Dele Jack Solomon is also there. But Amasi Haruna Adamo is also there. They're talking about the same issues that the other writers have also proposed. Bello Mohammed, Onunkwo Nauma, Leo Fadaka, Bello Mohammed, yes, Idorayen Upong, and Agbo Oko. Well, thanks a lot for
many people actually made contributions.
Yes, quite a torrent of tweets that we have received.
It's a very important topic, because life is involved. So at this point, gentlemen, we'd like to thank all of you for being here this morning and, of course, making a very useful contributions to the conversation. First, Professor Tanibi Alemika, Professor of Criminology and member of Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption. Thank you indeed. And Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu, Security and Defense Consultant and expert in Safe School Declaration. Thank you, as always. And of course, our own Kabiru Adamu, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, Security and Risk Management Expert. It's been a pleasure talking to you this morning.
Pleasure.
Dr. Ona Ekomo, we also thank you. Ona Ekomo is the President of Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operators in Nigeria.
All right, so that's it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you for tuning in. The program returns same time tomorrow, 7 in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley.
And then Kirian Umayo. Have a great day.